Welcome everyone to Open House. We have about an hour, and things I think tend to be more interesting when we have kind of live Q&A throughout the session. So if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or raise your hand and we can unmute and you can ask that question live. Super excited to welcome our guest today. My name is Olivia Kory, Head of Strategy at Haus, and Alex is currently the SVP of Growth and Digital at Perelel, which is one of the most exciting wellness brands on the market right now. Alex will give a proper elevator pitch, but Perelel offers vitamins and supplements for women. And I think what makes it cool is it's formulated for the exact stage that you're in, whether you're trying to conceive, you're pregnant, you're postpartum, wherever you're at, the ingredients are customized for you. So I took Perelel when we were having our first baby. A lot of my friends swear by it. And then Alex and I go way back from Netflix to Quibi, now working together on Perelel. I don't think I've ever met someone who has done so many different roles and done them so well. Like, you've been thrown into the fire. You've been thrown into so many different situations where it was the first time you've had to do it. And you've crushed every single challenge, every curveball that really has ever been thrown your way. From investment banking to content analytics to a pivot into marketing, a move to Asia, working on the APAC business at Spotify, and now breaking into e-comm. I love your approach to work. You've been an inspiration to me, and I'm excited for the rest of the folks on this call to learn from you as well. So Alex, welcome to Open House, and I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself in your own words.
Oh my gosh, what an intro. Thank you so much. I can kind of just try to give a brief kind of like career journey of kind of how I got here. And thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I started my career in investment banking in New York. I worked in the TMT sector, technology, media, and telecom at Deutsche Bank, and loved the kind of analytical challenge, the problem solving, but knew that I kind of wanted to move over to the consumer side. After I did the 2-year analyst program, I moved over to Netflix. I joined this content strategy team. They were specifically looking for people who had a skill set in financial modeling. And when I was there back in 2015, there were like 7 original shows. Like, they were really just starting out. You were kind of there around the same time. And it was a really special time to be there. There were like 300 people in the LA office. And I worked really closely with business strategists, data scientists, and creative content executives to build these data-driven programming frameworks to figure out what kind of content we should make next and how are we going to scale from 7 shows up to 700. And, using the consumer behavior and the data that we had to figure out the programming strategy. And then from there...
Can I ask you a quick question to cut you off? Did you guys know Stranger Things was going to be a hit before you made it? Or was that a total surprise?
We specifically made the strategic decision to invest in young adult content. So that was one of the strategies we mapped out through this framework. And then Stranger Things was a show that an amazing executive brought that fit in kind of that strategy that we outlined.
All right, keep going.
No, thanks for the questions. From there, once we had 700 original shows, the question became, what are we going to do with all this content? Like, what are we now going to market to get people to watch this or acquire new customers? So from there, those were the interesting questions of the company. And I moved over to the marketing strategy team, got to work with you and so many amazing people on the growth side to figure out what titles should we promote, what titles should we use to acquire new customers, and a lot of experimentation. Like, what's the right way to market? What's the right amount to spend? And then at the time, this very cool, buzzy startup was kind of making waves in media called Quibi. And so many amazing people were moving over there. You moved over there. Juan Bongiovanni, who we both worked with, moved over there. And I really miss that like special time of the 300 people in the LA office at Netflix. And I wanted to try a startup and see what that could be like. So I moved over there, led the marketing strategy function, partnered really closely with growth, brand, comms. And it was such a special time, as you know, because we had a year pre-launch. So like the hardest part about my job today is doing the day-to-day work, like needing to make tomorrow's numbers, but also doing the 2025 strategic planning and also planning for Black Friday. So like doing all and building the marketing tech stack at the same time. So like having a year to just really figure out what's the right way to do this and the right way to build it before launch was amazing. Quibi did not succeed and ultimately shut down. My husband at the time received an amazing offer to move to Asia, So we packed up and moved to Singapore. And at this time, like I knew it was going to take a while to get a job in Singapore. And so I wanted to kind of like in this interim time, take on something new and decided to start consulting and take on a few projects with people I knew or clients I knew to kind of bridge that gap. So did a project at Disney, did a project at Clubhouse. And this is actually when I got connected to the co-founders, Victoria and Alex at Perelel. And I actually first joined as a strategic advisor. So I did that for a little bit, ultimately ended up getting a full-time job at Spotify in Singapore, supporting Asia, Korea, Japan, India, Southeast Asia, Australia for podcast strategy, but kept advising for Perelel. And so it was a really natural transition where they were looking for a head of growth. For some reason, they came to me to ask, like I didn't have any operating experience. I was helping them on the strategy side. And I knew that I wanted to move into an operating role. So it was the perfect transition because I knew the co-founders, they knew me. And it was something that I really wanted to try. So I moved into Perelel full-time 2 years ago.
Amazing. And I love it. You've approached it because this is new to you. Like this is the first growth role you've ever had. You're approaching it with such fresh eyes and like really, truly focusing on the things that are moving the needle and not, you don't bring any baggage to the role in terms of, oh, well, this worked in the past, so we need to try it. So talk to me a little bit about Perelel. Like what is the elevator pitch for the product? I know there's so many vitamin supplement brands out there. What makes you all different?
Perelel is the first OBGYN founded vitamin brand. So we work very closely with Dr. Bayati. She's a practicing OBGYN in Santa Monica. She creates all of our products and helps with all of our formulation. She also works with a panel of doctors. So for example, we work with Dr. Brian Levine at CCRM in New York. He's one of the nation's top fertility experts. We create different vitamins for every stage of a woman's hormonal life cycle. From getting your period, we have the cycle support pack, to trying to conceive, the conception support pack, each individual trimester of pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause. And we've also created these additional products that pair with those packs. So targeted supplements to support additional fertility or maybe help balance your hormones, and daily powders like greens and hydration that are all pregnancy and breastfeeding safe.
Amazing. Okay, and so this industry is new to me. I've only really experienced health and wellness through the customers that we've worked with over the past couple of years. So January is like your Super Bowl. It's like, e-comm brands have Black Friday, Cyber Monday. January is big. These brands benefit immensely from like new year, new you, focus on getting healthy. So this is like the hidden quarter that starts right after Christmas into mid-January. And you shared this stat with me that 90% plus of consumers will continue shopping after the holidays, but the focus shifts from gifts to personal purchases. So this is a great time for these brands. Vitamins, supplements, not necessarily giftable. So this is really the sweet spot in terms of timing. And it's important to start the year off strong. Like January can make or break your year. Whereas for some of these e-com brands, they're kind of backloaded into November, December. They have all year to focus on making the most. Like you need to start out hot or you're going to be kind of playing defense all year. How are you thinking about Q5?
So for us, we definitely play in Black Friday. Like that's a huge time of year for us as well. We've built that into a big part of our business over the last couple of years. But for us, Q5, from a behavior perspective, this is just when our woman is shopping and she's really thinking about how is she going to start off next year? Or maybe she's thinking about or planning for a family. Maybe she just found out she's pregnant in November, December. She's trying to figure out what the best prenatals are for her. And so this woman's trying to not only buy one product or try one product, but start out 2025 with her best foot forward. Pull together a routine that works for her, a routine that she can trust, that for us is made by doctors, that has the credibility, maybe the clinical studies to back it up. It's not necessarily fear-mongering or new year, new me attitude. It's just deeply understanding our customer and being able to serve her in the best way.
All right, this is the first time in the history of Open House that we've got someone raising their hand live. Steven Greitzer, Marty, Joel, can we maybe unmute Steven? There we go. All right. And now Steve, there we go. All right, you're unmuted.
I actually accidentally raised my hand a lot earlier than I had intended because I have many questions for the two of you. But thank you guys so much for doing this. I feel like one question I have before we dive into the parallel journey actually goes back to the Quibi chapter of the journey. And I'm curious to the two of you, Olivia and Alex, you can share a bit more about some of the lessons you learned from failure that have helped serve as the foundation for both of you as you headed into this Haus and Perelel chapter?
I have one quick answer here, and then Alex, I want you to go. But what I take from the Quibi experience is like we failed spectacularly, and everything was okay. We all went on to do really great things, and what I learned from that experience is that the worst that could have possibly happened, and it was all okay. And so that made me actually a lot more apt to like take risks in my career and to not worry about what could happen because ultimately this is just one chapter in a very, very long journey. Alex, I'm curious about you though.
I was going to say something very similar. Like I have no regrets for my time there, but I think if I had to pick something else, it would be some of the things that went wrong. A lot of us internally felt like we could have predicted, like we felt like maybe we could have done things differently from a marketing perspective or, done a lot of the day-to-day differently. But ultimately, I think that was a good learning for me too, which is not everything is our decision. And, it's a team effort and these things kind of all came together for the whole team. So I really don't have any regrets. I think working there made me a stronger growth marketer from working with people like you and Steven. And maybe one of the other biggest learnings is just hiring. Like they built such an amazing team. We worked with such awesome PMs and marketers and executives, and having Meg and Jeffrey kind of bring that group of talent together, that is what makes a company and a product. So hiring is the most important thing, and leadership.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Stephen. Let's go back to Q5. So what are you focused on? What are you doing to make sure that you like capitalize on this very important month?
So the first thing that's most important for me, speaking about team, is making sure that my team feels really energized and motivated going into next year. So we, like I mentioned, participate in Black Friday. It's very exhausting. We've been planning that for months. We kick off planning in June, July. By the end of the year, a lot of people are feeling exhausted, burnt out, ready to spend the holidays with their loved ones. And so the first thing for me as a leader is just to be a human being and make sure that I am planning far enough in advance that my team is able to have time off, completely protected time. Hanukkah, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Obviously, we'll be checking in throughout Q5 and we have business goals to hit and everything needs to run smoothly, but we also need a break and we need to relax. And 2025 is going to be a huge year for our business. So that's the number one thing, is that we need to show up next year as our best selves and really energized to tackle the year ahead. The second thing for us is that we're a subscription business. It's like the beauty of our products because we automatically move you from one pack into the next throughout your pregnancy journey. And as you mentioned, January is an absolutely critical month for us to bring in really high quality customers in January. That sets the tone for the whole year. So much of that kind of retention and that cohort are going to make or break the revenue for the rest of the year. It's very hard to kind of make it up as you go through the rest of the year. So for us, Q5 is about constructing an offer and constructing a marketing plan that's going to incentivize the behavior that we want, which is bringing this cohort of high quality subscribers in as early as possible. So for the past few years, we've run this offer, which is X% off your first 3 months. And we found that even though that's a deep kind of hit to take on the margin for offering that discount for 3 months, when someone is subscribing for 3 months, their retention looks very good for the rest of the year, better than an average customer we're bringing in. And so that offer, you understand the business, you see how we move you from one pack to the next, you're in the subscriber portal, you're on our email list, see the real value of the subscription, you're feeling the benefits. And so for us, that offer is incentivizing the behavior we want, makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of the offer that we've been running for the past few years. And then I think the last thing is, again, mentioned a little bit earlier, but we feel like we understand this customer better than anyone else. They created this business based on a problem that they were solving themselves. And now we all very deeply and intimately understand this woman. So it's about really understanding who she is, what she's looking for during this time, what messaging is going to resonate with her, what offers and products are going to resonate with her. I'm very involved in our customer service inbox every single day. I'm tagged in multiple comments and tickets that I'm resolving. I'm very active in the Slack channel. I personally go through our post-purchase survey results and read all of the responses that come in. So everyone kind of involved in the day-to-day, no matter what level, really deeply understands this woman and what she's looking for at this time and what problem she's having.
This is a common trait I see amongst successful, both like growth leaders and founders, is that there's no task, big or small. Stephen ironically taught me a lot of this. Like, no task too big, too small. Like, the founders are often still, even years in, going through customer support tickets. And I think that that's critical. Like, it sounds like you guys are doing that as well. And it's not something like you could have a coordinator doing it, but it really, I think, means it's more meaningful for the business that you all have close eyes here. And just to go back to the offer, so you're incentivizing like 3 months with a discount here. If you didn't do that, would you see that, this is just my own personal curiosity, like would you see a lower quality cohort come in of just that like new year, new you? Like, do you think that would happen if you didn't actually make a concerted effort to protect against that?
This is a really good question. And I guess this is like the bread and butter of Haus, which is what is the counterfactual? There's also this trope of like, you could actually spend no money during Black Friday and have the same results because customers are going to buy no matter what. People are looking for these deals and they're looking to go to these brands that they've been kind of keeping an eye on for the last few months. For us, yes, probably we bring in a similar quality customer during this time. Maybe not with the same retention curve. Like, I think that 3-month offer is really important, that with vitamins where it takes 30, 60, 90 days to maybe see the results, with a pregnancy where you're moving from one trimester to the next. And because we automatically move you between those trimester specific packs, you're really getting to see the value of how we show up at your door, how we know when your due date is, how we're tailoring this journey for you. We're giving you recommendations throughout your journey of additional products that might be right for your exact stage. So you really get to see the true benefit by sticking with us for those 3 months versus just the 1 month. So maybe we would be able to bring in a similar quality customer for the first month. Maybe we're finding that woman, but is she going to have the same behavior without that offer? I'm not sure. Are they going to give a different offer than us? Is someone who's looking for a prenatal, are they willing to go with another brand because of price? Because, maybe they're more competitive in that area. And so we also want to make sure we're just playing in this space of during this time, there's a lot of noise in the health and wellness space, a lot of offers, and we do want to make sure that we're winning.
Awesome. Yep. I think you hit on one of the questions in the chat was like, how did you determine 3-month promo versus 1 month? So I think we covered that. All right, let's talk about 2 more things related to Q5. I want to talk about Meta a little bit, and then I want to talk about e-comm and what you're doing in terms of the site experience. Because when we were prepping, you were telling me about some tools and some like workflows that have really helped in some big wins. So first, let's talk about Meta. I have no idea if this is true, but there's this perception that Meta is like not working as well as it once did. There was something that seemed to have happened last February or February of this year where performance dropped off. There's a theory that like engineers made tweaks and performance never really bounced back. You were telling me something in our prep chat about how you think about Meta and what you do to protect against like your biggest channel not working.
Yeah, I've definitely heard something similar. We haven't necessarily seen that. Every 6 months, we completely rebuild the campaign. We're always making enhancements or optimizations that we think are going to benefit the campaign. But every 6 months, we completely restart and reset the campaign. So we actually reset our campaign in February of this year. We time it so that it's after Q5, and then we reset it again the first week of October, the first week of the quarter, where if there is a hit, we can tolerate it before far enough in advance of Black Friday. So if we do need to recover, we've baked that recovery time in. So we're kind of on that cadence of every 6 months, we're fully resetting. In September of this year, we started to see a little bit of softness. We reset the campaign. We made some tweaks in the new campaign. It also just allows us the chance to say, okay, let's do a deep dive here. What has been working? Is there anything we want to test or start new or try now that we're doing the full reset that won't send everything into learning or won't delay us? We're going to do the reset anyway. So this is the time to try something new. And so we started to see a little softness in September, did the reset, and we were right back on track. So that seems to have been working well for us for the last 1.5 or 2 years.
I thought that was super interesting. It's like you're almost like revalidating that your account structure is optimal every 6 months, which is, it kind of lines up to what we say is make sure you're testing and validating your big bets quarterly or every 6 months. So yeah, like I think this is really important because a lot of brands, they have best practices for Meta that might be a year old now, and it might not be best practice in Meta anymore. They, again, they're making changes to their system. And so it is important to kind of validate that the best practice that they've shared with you is indeed the case, at a more frequent cadence. Okay, let's move on to e-comm. Tell me about your site experience in what's on your mind in terms of tests and wins moving into Q5.
Are constantly changing our site. We're running 50 tests a month and we're rolling out new
50.
features. 50 tests a month. And
50. You run all of those?
It varies. It's a test on our quiz. It's a test on a PDP module. It's a navigation test. We, inspired by a Ramp, the podcast, Lenny's podcast, like he interviewed the CTO of Ramp, and he was saying the number one most important thing for them is the velocity of experimentation. And so once we heard that, we kind of completely shifted mindset. We feel like at our stage, we've only been around for 4 years. We have that much to test and play around with, even if it's a copy change, even if it's a color change, even if it's a new module. We kind of have these ideas and we have these insights that we feel like we can be testing or changing that much. So we're running a very high velocity of tests. We're also making a lot of feature changes and optimizations with our dev. So heading into Q5, like I shared earlier, we are mostly focused on helping customers build a routine that's going to work for them. So not just selling them one product or not just bringing them to a PDP, but bringing them to the quiz so that they can answer a few questions and get a personalized recommendation, or bringing them to our bundle builder, which we launched in September to help them figure out what 3 products are going to be right for their exact stage. So we're trying to build these experiences that are very personalized to help this woman build a routine that's going to work for her and set her off on the best kind of foot forward. We've also spent a lot of time testing the cross-sell module on the PDPs, what other products are going to pair well with the product that you're buying or with the product that you're spending the most time doing the research on. So we're spending a lot of time testing experiences like that. We also spent a lot of time going through our FAQs from customer service. We get a lot of questions through our review platform as well. Customers will leave questions in there. We ask in our post-purchase survey, what else could we have done on the website that would have enhanced your experience? Is there any information that's missing? So we're trying to make sure we're like bringing that information to the forefront so they spend less time needing to Google or email us or look up information on their own or dig through the FAQs. Like, what's the information we really need to bring at the forefront to make them have confidence in the decision and make the decision faster?
Awesome. I'm glad you mentioned the quiz. Because I used to, just as an outsider, I used to think that that was a lot of friction to add to a buying experience. I've become a lot more bullish on it. We've tested even driving your ads to the quiz for certain brands in this category, and it's worked really well. Is this something that you guys see success with?
Yeah, we see a lot of success in our quiz. I think it is hard to get someone to take the quiz. So I think using ads, or we have a pop-up on our site. We always are testing where in the menu should it be sitting and where should the quiz be versus the bundle builder. But for the quiz, yeah, we see really high conversion rate. We see that it is very personalized for like a visitor. If you're willing to spend 60 seconds going through the quiz, we want to make that really valuable to you and give you those recommendations. We also spend a lot of time testing the results page. So making sure like you understand why you've been given these results and you understand what these products are. For us, a big question is, can I take all these products together, especially during pregnancy? And so making sure that we're emphasizing what's safe to take together, what's not safe to take together. We're only recommending things through the quiz that are safe to pair together. And then we've also spent time testing ads landing to the quiz.
Awesome. Awesome. You mentioned a site test, a speed test, specifically that. Tell me a little bit about the site speed test that you ran.
Yeah, so we earlier in the year, we partnered with a company and didn't necessarily see great results from implementing with them. Everything on Shopify for site speed says perfect, A plus, green in the 90th percentile. So we felt like we were already following best practice. Like I didn't really think that there was going to be a lot of untapped opportunity, but maybe whatever framework we're using for experimentation, ICE, or whatever your framework is to figure out what could the impact be and how much is the effort. And so I didn't think that there was a lot of untapped opportunity with site speed optimization, but I was introduced to this company called EdgeMesh through our developer, and they were willing to do a 60-day test with us. So they turned their platform on, they split the traffic 50-50, and we were able to see for the traffic that had EdgeMesh implemented, what was the conversion rate? And for the platform that didn't have EdgeMesh, what was the conversion rate? And we saw a 14% difference. So the traffic with EdgeMesh had a 14% higher conversion rate. The EdgeMesh test result was so important because it was the overall conversion rate to our entire business. And so even though I felt like we were following best practice, there was clearly something that was being left out by not using a platform by them. So that was a really good learning for me, because even when you feel like you're following the best thing to do, or all the numbers kind of maybe look okay, maybe that's not the best place that you want to be exploring. We're always looking at new platforms or new tools that we can implement, especially when there's a really smart team behind it and really good people. We've really loved working with them, and we obviously love the results.
Amazing. Love to hear it. All right. Last thing on Q5, tell me about your channel mix. Where do you spend in terms of ads? And then I want to focus a little bit on influencers and YouTube.
We, for ads, spend on Meta, TikTok, and Google. One of the biggest reasons of bringing you guys on board is trying to figure out what that mix should be. There's also changes coming to Meta for health and wellness brands. So we see really good success there, but we don't want to be too reliant on any given channel. There's also now TikTok is in the news, so we don't want to be, again, too reliant on any given channel for a number of reasons. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? So we are kind of on those 3 channels for advertising. We are also launching direct mail for the first time, so we're really excited to see what the impact of that can be. Obviously, email is going to be a huge component of that. Affiliate is a big piece too. A lot of listicles and articles coming out, the best vitamins of 2025, and the best prenatal vitamins for the year. So we want to be on all of those lists. Influencer is a really big part of the strategy, especially in January. We're going to go really heavy across Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. We've historically been pretty heavy on Instagram, so we'll be kind of expanding into those other channels as well. And then a lot of kind of optimization on the website.
Awesome. You mentioned YouTube influencers to me in our prep call, and primarily focusing, I think, in 2024 on Instagram as your influencer focus. But tell me what you've learned about YouTube and how you're actioning on that moving into 2025.
Yeah. So last year we ran a test with YouTube influencers. Well, we just started. We thought it would be the right channel for us to begin investing into YouTube influencers in Q1 of 2024. So we found YouTube influencers that were a great fit for us, that loved our product, and that spoke about it very well. And after looking back in the 30-day period, we didn't necessarily see a huge impact. It definitely was not on the same level as we've seen for Instagram. On Instagram, someone posts on stories, we immediately see that impact. We can tell if they were successful or not. And it's pretty obvious within not just a 30-day period, but a 2 to 3 day period. But with YouTube, we didn't really see that. There weren't any standout winners or huge success stories there. So we finished the deals for Q1 and decided we weren't really going to continue investing in YouTube influencers, and we would just turn all of our attention to Instagram. But at the end of the year, when we were doing our full year recap of, okay, who worked for us, who didn't work for us, what are the themes that we're seeing here? One of the things that really stood out is that all of those YouTube influencers from Q1 rose to the top of all of the influencers we booked across YouTube and Instagram. And this long tail of content that just exists on YouTube, people would just keep coming back and back to those videos. The discount code was there, the link was there. And because they were just using it throughout the year, those influencers on YouTube actually were kind of at the top of the pack for us. So going into 2025, we've been able to carve out a pretty decent size of our influencer strategy to dedicate to YouTube. We feel like this is a really important channel and a really big part of the influencer story going into next year.
Yeah, this is huge and pretty consistent with what I see across a large swath of customers at Haus. Is like, if you're focusing on short-termism and you're looking at attribution, you will likely be investing in Facebook, Google search, and that's it. And like, it doesn't even look like YouTube can hang in terms of performance, both on the paid side and the influencer side. And then if you look out at a longer time horizon and you actually move off of like traditional attribution, it can very much hang in there, like alongside Meta and Google search. What you saw was that they did perform just over a longer time horizon, but they were actually like, even through attribution like discount codes redemption, it was still performing, but just over a longer time.
Yeah, we're just looking at traffic and discount code uses mostly when we're looking at influencers, purely just looking at discount code uses. Looking at conversions, we were able to see that throughout the course of the year, those YouTubers were at the top of the pack for all the influencers we booked. And it is hard, to your point, like if you're trying to come up with a Q5 strategy for this time period, this like 3-week time period, YouTube isn't going to get you the result you want. But if you want throughout the course of the year to have really high quality content that does a really good job of explaining your product and the benefits of the product and why these influencers chose this brand, we do particularly well in long form because it can be a little bit tricky to explain what makes us so different. And so we were able to see that over the course of the year, that is the right channel to be investing in for us.
Yep. And I imagine there is even more value here that you don't see yet, just like, and you're going to be running more Haus tests. Like there's like probably folks who just aren't like clicking through and using the code and hitting, like there's maybe like a view through component here where they're like influenced by this content, but they're coming back later through like what looks like an organic conversion. So I'm excited to dig in here. I think this is just one data point that suggests that there's probably a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah, one other thing that might be hard to measure, but we maybe think could be a piece as well, is that for a very new young brand like us, there aren't a lot of reviews of our products on YouTube. So if you're searching Perelel reviews on YouTube and you're trying to find someone really reviewing our products, it takes a while to build that up. And so having this content that's there where consumers or potential consumers can see, okay, real people are taking this. This is their real review and assessment. I think that's also helpful just to have that there for credibility.
A good question on the site. Do you all track code leaks? And is that like a problem in a channel like YouTube?
Yes, we do track code leaks. That's a really good question for YouTube. We haven't seen the YouTube codes leak yet, but we do change out influencer codes if we have a multi-month deal with someone every quarter. So it could be the case that we might have to go back to a YouTube influencer if we see their code leak and have them just replace it and change it in the description. We don't actually have them say their code in the video. They just link out to it in the description. So if we do find that there's leakage, I think it would be easy to go back and change that.
Cool. Last question from Ty in the chat, and then we can move on, is like, how do you think about the channel mix specifically during Q5? Does it change at all, or is it just like, let's run with what has worked in the past, or is your channel mix for Q5 like distinctly different from other times of the year?
That's a really good question. I don't think I have a great answer to that, and this would be a great Haus test because I think there's a lot of demand in the market. So I could imagine something like Google could be completely different when people are really searching for what's their health and wellness routine going to be, what are their vitamins going to be. That might look very different than February or March. So I think that would be a really good test. But I also think during this time, people are on their phones a ton. And there's a lot of really great entertaining content on Instagram and TikTok. So we're going to pretty much run the same mix that we usually do throughout the year. We'll probably run a similar mix to what we did for Black Friday, but that would be a really good test.
No new channel bets that you don't.
The only new thing we're doing is we are launching direct mail. For Q5, we are going to have just a 1-day send to make sure that this specific segment is going to receive direct mail during the sale time. So that will definitely be new for us.
Direct mail is like one of the easier to measure channels because you have their address and you can do a very easy geo test. So I'm excited to see how that does. On that note, so let's switch gears. We recently welcomed Perelel into the Haus family. You guys will be working with us in 2025, but we've been talking for about a year about like when it makes sense to actually invest in incrementality testing. You guys are a new brand, and I'm on record saying that young brands who are like pretty concentrated in a single channel probably don't need to overcomplicate their measurement. Like you should be able to see any change you're making on the top line in terms of like if you just shut off Meta one day or you turn it down significantly, like for a young brand, again, just spending in a single channel, like they should be able to see this stuff pretty clearly. And then the challenges come when you start growing very quickly. And that's a great thing. I always say it's like a luxury. It's a great problem to have if mentality is starting to become a problem in it, and that attribution is getting fuzzy in terms of like, where's your growth coming from? What would have happened anyway versus what are my paid dollars actually driving? So tell me a little bit about like the signals that you saw in the business that suggested that you needed to be running more experiments.
Yeah. Well, yes, you have gone on record for telling me multiple times to just turn off spend myself and tell you what happens. But I think there's a few things that we've seen over the last year that have made us feel really confident that now is the right time to partner with Haus. The first thing is that we are very focused on our blended CAC, our fully loaded CAC going into next year. And so it's not just about optimizing a single channel like paid or optimizing a single initiative. It's very much about the overall spend for the business and the outcome you get for that. So across all channels, whether we've already been on them throughout this year, Meta, Google, TikTok, or we're launching new channels going into next year like direct mail or TV, how can we bring that blended CAC down? That's also part of our focus this year. Next year, we're very focused on profitability. So we try to be as efficient as possible this year with our marketing dollars, of course, but next year we want to be very smart about what channels are really doing the hardest work for us and where might we be overspending and where is there more room to put more investment in to get a bigger bang. So I think those are like two main pieces of where we are as a business that made this the right time. And then the third piece is we are going to be launching new channels. We're launching direct mail next year. We're launching TV. We've done a little bit of testing with YouTube this year because of this influencer insight. We might be doing more going into next year. And so I really do want to understand what is the impact on the whole funnel of bringing these new pieces into the mix. Not just, of course, we have so many test ideas for Meta and TikTok and Google and our paid social and our paid search channels, but for the overall mix, how incremental is TV on top of everything we're already doing? And how much is direct mail critical to the mix? Or do we have more room to go on Meta? Do we have more room to go on TikTok? Are we completely overspending on PMAX? So we just have so many questions where we are adding new channels, things are becoming more complicated. We have this focus on profitability as a business, and we want to get really sharp on exactly where we're spending and what the impact of each channel is and how that all comes together.
Yep. How much of your decision to partner with us came from these like changes that Meta is making to health and wellness brands and what they can do inside of the channel? And you mentioned like the TikTok ban. Like, talk to me a little bit about how you're thinking about those channels into the future.
That specific decision didn't impact us partnering together, but the concept of being too reliant on any one channel was very much part of this decision. We feel like we are very reliant on Meta as a business. And so obviously this update does play into that. We're going to have to figure out, but I think more of partnering with you guys is the sentiment of not wanting to be too reliant on any one channel and figuring out where there might be other opportunity to have just as big of an impact as what we see on Meta today.
Awesome. All right. So many insights there. That was just like a crazy packed 45 minutes. Let's switch gears over to Netflix. Like, we both look back on Netflix very fondly. I say it was like a playground for learning. Talk to me about like your biggest learnings from your time there?
Oh my God, it was like such an amazing time to be there. I think the first thing for me is the learning of focus. So when we were there, I feel like Reed, the CEO, would say all the time, we are only doing one thing. We were only doing streaming. Obviously, that's evolved. Now there's there's a little bit of theatrical in the mix, there's consumer products, there's gaming now. But when we were there, it was just streaming. Get people to stream more TV and movies. So every single thing we did as a business was to achieve that one goal of get people to stream more. That has been so helpful in everything I've done because I always just go back to what is the main KPI. Like in my role now at Perelel, it's great if affiliate looks really good. It's great if email looks really good. I just care about one metric, and that's new orders every single day. My job is to bring new customers into Perelel every single day. So whatever helps me achieve that goal is the right thing to do. And that learning of focus, I think, really came from Netflix. The other thing I would say is measurement, and not just like being data driven, but we worked so closely with data scientists and PMs and PhDs. You couldn't really get away with anything that was not the most intellectually honest answer of what was actually the result of whatever you're analyzing, like the show performance or a marketing test or whatever we were doing. It was like more than just being data driven. It was just this concept of like intellectual honesty and being really truthful. Did this work or did it not work? And it's okay if it didn't work. What was the learning and what was the real answer and the real impact? So that I feel like was such a unique learning and lesson from Netflix. I think a lot of people can be data driven, but that lesson was really good. And then the third thing actually was a piece of advice I got from my manager when I switched over to content strategy into marketing strategy, because it was my first time kind of working in a marketing function. My manager pulled me aside and said to me, just remember to always go back to first principles. Like, don't get too fancy, don't get ahead of yourself, just go back to the basics. And whenever you like have a question or you're trying to solve something, first principles. And that just is so true. I bring that with me every single day, even with what you guys are doing and what we're going to start doing with you. The way we're answering the questions is so hard and complicated and technical and requires data scientists and requires stats. But the question is very simple. If I change this budget, if I change this one thing over here, what is the actual impact to the business? So just going back to like the simplicity and just those first principles of what are the questions we need to be asking to achieve the business outcomes that we want. That was a piece of advice that I got and a really good lesson that I'll kind of carry with me forever.
Yeah. I love that. We have a first principles thinker on our team in marketing. His name is Janesh. He might be listening. And like, I always thank him for doing that, because it really like going back to the basics, so underrated in this industry, especially in measurement specifically. So that's great. Anything else in terms of Netflix lessons?
I guess another thing, this is what Juan Bongiovanni, he wasn't my boss, but I always call him my boss. He was your boss, actually. But this is something that Juan Bongiovanni always said. This is very intrinsic in the Netflix culture, is feedback. And Juan always said feedback is a gift. And it's very much part of my leadership style. I'm always giving my team feedback, positive and constructive. I always like to get feedback from my peers or my team or my manager. My manager is very good at giving me feedback, but it really is a gift, because if someone's taking the time out of their day to think about how they want to deliver that feedback and what they want to say to make you better or to make you a better partner to them or to make you a better leader, there's thought and intention that's going into that. And I always try to kind of listen and keep that in mind. And I have kind of found that just keeping that always on feedback culture, it's a muscle you have to build. It can feel really like awkward at first to have to give people feedback, but if you're just always intrinsically, it's just part of the day-to-day, it's part of the work, kind of sharing feedback with others. I think it kind of maybe can take some of the sting off if it's constructive, but feedback is a gift. And I think that was a really good lesson. And then I think this is similar to Quibi, just the caliber of talent, but Netflix has this phrase like stunning colleagues. And I think that was very true. There's so much time and thought and consideration that goes into the recruiting process and the hiring plan and the panel that they just bring such a high caliber of talent to the team. That kind of like lesson of just the caliber of talent and trying to build the best team possible, I think that was also very much there at Quibi is a really good lesson. It's just all about the people.
Yep. Going back to feedback, like I think for folks who weren't a part of this, like there was a portal every year when we did 360s where we give written feedback to anybody at the company, including Reed, the CEO, and like the C-suite. And then you have to open that portal and like read all of the feedback that's been given to you. And it's so hard, and especially if it's new to you, train that muscle. But when I think about why I grew so much in my career at Netflix, it was 100% without a doubt the feedback, like the things that you don't want to hear, like who's the person who's going to shine a mirror and point these things out, and really like celebrating that is why people grow so much in cultures like this, is because you're saying the thing that everyone else is afraid to say.
Yeah. This is, okay, I'm a big F1 fan. So this is like, there was this video of Toto Wolff like giving Lewis Hamilton feedback as he exits his 12-year career at Mercedes and he's going to Ferrari. And in the video, he's saying like the most important thing is that you should go find your people, and not just the people that are going to find the people who are willing to point out the things that you are trying to hide. And we all have that. Like we all have, something that isn't a strength, or isn't something you necessarily want someone to call out. There's like a tactful way to go about giving and delivering feedback, but being able to be a teammate and a support to someone who maybe does need help in a certain area or wants to grow or wants to learn a new skill. I think that was really good advice from Toto, like find the people that are willing to do that for you.
And a lot of people here don't know you, but the fact that you like F1 is very off-brand, very confusing. I have not watched the documentary, so I don't know who you're talking about and what you're talking about, but I'm sure it's a really great analogy.
Okay, I'm sure people here can chime in. I'm sure there's other F1 fans on this call.
All right, Alex, we have about 5 more minutes. Any other like final kind of like career lessons? You started in growth like a year or two ago, and you are absolutely killing it. Perelel is killing it. Any other advice in terms of like career pivots for the folks listening?
I think the biggest thing is I think the reason why I've been able to be in the role that I'm in is because of that move that I made during the pandemic, where I took on some consulting opportunities. I never thought that I was equipped enough to be hired as a consultant by these companies. And so I was able to kind of do that and do a good job and bring on more clients. So just stepping outside of your comfort zone and pushing yourself to take on these kinds of roles that are going to lead you to the place that you ultimately want to be. And as I looked around at other people whose careers that I wanted, I tried to look at what paths they took and tried to kind of carve out a path for myself to ultimately end up in a role like this. So I think step outside of your comfort zone and look around at other people's career paths and journeys and how they kind of got to where they are, if that's a role that you desire.
So do you think like the consulting was a toe dip to kind of like see if you could succeed in a role like this without having to make a commitment? Like, is that the kind of the benefit there of doing this first as a consultant?
I think joining Perelel as an advisor first helped me to see like what it would be like in the day-to-day of working at this company specifically. It also helped me work really closely with the co-founders and see what that was like. And it helped them get to know me as well. So they were the ones who brought this role to me and said, we really think you can do this. And I think just establishing those kinds of relationships and giving yourself the opportunity to see what it's like on the inside of a company where you might want to be or a role you might want to have. You don't necessarily have to make the full-time commitment or come out ahead in a full-time interview process. You can kind of get started in something that's maybe a little bit lower risk in a consulting capacity.
Awesome. All right, we have one more question on the chat, then I'm going to open it up. Maddie Wallace, you're asking really great questions. Going back to Q5, I know other health and wellness brands also prioritize this time of year. So how do you stand out in terms of like securing influencers? Like, does it become a lot more competitive when every other brand is also trying to secure like the influencers with the biggest voices?
This is a great question. So we do a couple of things here to help mitigate this. One thing that we do is we start booking multi-month deals with influencers well in advance so that Q1 is one of the deliverables, but maybe there was like a September, October, January deliverable. So we're booking with influencers. We're probably booking in the beginning of Q3, maybe even the end of Q2 to make sure that this is part of that multi-month deal. And the other thing is that we are focused on a niche for influencers. So we are very focused on pregnant influencers or postpartum or women who are trying to conceive. And we do feel that we have the best product on the market for this time in your life. So we do kind of provide what we think is a really good pitch to the influencer and her team of, why she should either start with us or switch over to us. And we found a lot of success in that. So I think it's kind of the quality of the product and getting smart about the deal structure.
Awesome. All right. We have time for maybe one more question if there are any final hand raisers. Otherwise, we can start to wrap this up, but I will. Okay, we have one more question coming through, and this is also on influencers. Do you whitelist their content? Is it? I assume that's
That's a huge part of our strategy is whitelisting, both on Instagram and on TikTok. And we do ramp this up in Q5. We also specifically are whitelisting our content for our deal. So having the influencer specifically speak to the discount code and the sale, the promo that we're running at the time. We have also definitely seen that. So I think that's a really good kind of note from Mark. Some of the biggest publishers, Healthline, Forbes Health, have been affected by some of these SEO changes. And so we're kind of getting around that by working with just smaller publishers, or again, going back and looking at what have been the top revenue drivers for us in our affiliate program and how can we get smarter about booking deals with them, even if they're not, a Healthline of the world.
Yep, that's great. Awesome. All right. Well, Alex, it is December 16th. We're like a week out from the holidays, and to everybody who's listened as well, but Alex and all of the attendees, thank you guys for spending an hour with us today during a very busy time. We'll get a recording of the session up on YouTube, Spotify. Make sure you're following Haus on LinkedIn and on Twitter for more content like this. But again, everyone, thank you so much. Alex, thank you for all of these lessons. I feel like this was like jam-packed with both very practical advice that people can apply tomorrow and also like some inspiring kind of career wisdom that I always enjoy as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.